Okay, I'm back. All right, hello guys. We are starting our talk today all about fertility. So I'm just going to wait here. I know it wasn't working very well before, so we're just going to wait a few minutes, 60 seconds here before I get really started on everything that we're going to talk about, just to make sure that no one misses out on the topic. But welcome to the live. So just so you guys know, you can ask questions at any point. Oh, hey, Kelly. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I thought I saw a comment that you had left there. So you can leave a comment at any point. I will start talking about different things. And then as the comments come... Okay, you can hear me. Cool. Yeah, I tried to do something different before, but that's what happens when I try something new and I already know how something works. So I'm glad I'm live here. So we're going to go ahead and get started about just fertility and why I wanted to talk about this. If you guys have any questions about fertility or anything like that, I will be looking here on my Facebook page for any comments. Or if you don't want to leave a comment live here, I'll be looking at our message area. So if you want to send me a message, if you want your question to be private, we can do that as well. Okay, so we'll talk about diabetes. Yes, we'll definitely talk about diabetes here. I will be talking about diabetes. That's going to be something that's going to be really important in regards to ovarian health and overall health. So let's go ahead. We're just going to keep on waiting here, and then I'm going to go ahead and jump in here. So, all right. Okay. So one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this, one of the reasons why I thought it was really, really important to talk about this is because I'm seeing a lot of women with hormone issues. So one of the things I'm going to say is that right off the bat, when we're talking about fertility, well, first of all, I'm Dr. Rebecca Warren. Hey guys, Dr. Rebecca Warren. I'm part of Doctors Warren. I am also the thyroidless doc, so I'm a doctor that lives her whole life without a thyroid. So everything that I talk about, everything that I teach, I've implemented myself, I've experienced myself, so there's some empathy there for a lot of you guys if you're having some hormone issues or some fertility things going on. So the reason why I wanted to do this Facebook Live is because I've seen a lot of women in my office and even virtually that I've coached where they're sitting across from me and they've had a lot of struggles, right? A lot of struggles, whether that's getting pregnant or they're trying to get pregnant or they've miscarried. And so the one thing that I think is really, really important to understand, what's really, really, really important to understand is that the number one thing that a woman deserves is to be well, to feel good in her body, to feel good when her period comes, to feel good as she's transitioning into menopause, that you deserve to be well. And from being well, your fertility is well, okay? So anytime a woman sits across from me, when I'm sitting there, I'm not thinking about like, okay, how can we get her pregnant? How can she get pregnant? When I sit there and I go through the health history and I'm looking at the lab work and I'm looking at the hormones, all I'm thinking is, oh my gosh, the quality of life here is crap. Oh my gosh, no wonder she's drinking coffee to get through the day. No wonder she's needing wine to unrest. Whoa, I bet you her cortisol's all out of whack. No wonder she can't lose weight because her thyroid. I never sit there and think, oh, okay, well, these are all the reasons she can't get pregnant. No, I think these are all the reasons she doesn't feel comfortable in her own skin, or these are all the reasons why she had to get on birth control, or these are all the reasons that she had to go through what she went through. Fertility comes secondary to you being well. Fertility, being able to reproduce, comes after you being well enough to heal and to balance and to have your hormones balanced. That if you want to lose weight, that you can lose weight. That if you want to get active, you can get active. That you should be able to have your period again as an uneventful thing. But what ends up happening is the same things that, you know, are red flags during our period, the same things that are red flags after our periods, what happens when we try to, all those red flags are the same reasons you're going to have fertility issues. It's the same reasons you're going to have issues going through menopause. And so right now, the biggest thing I can say for every woman that wants to be well enough to have good fertility health, and wants to be well enough to get pregnant when they want to get pregnant and avoid it when they, don't want to, is to know and understand your menstrual cycles. Know your menstrual cycle is a vital sign, according to ACOG, okay, the Obstetrics and Gynecology American, that association. Your menstrual cycle can tell you everything you need to know about what's going on, all right? Your menstrual cycle can let you know if you're producing enough of some hormones, if you're struggling with some other hormones, what you need to do to prepare yourself, okay? Number one, understand your menstrual cycle. Number two, do not be afraid to get tested. Do not be afraid to check your fasting insulin levels, and I'll let you guys know why. Do not be afraid to check your vitamin D. Vitamin D, before I did this, I just looked at vitamin D and fertility, both in the male and the female, and it is one of the driving factors that can help with fertility or can make infertility happen, okay? So there's vitamin D. Don't be afraid to check your vitamin D, your fasting glucose, to check your TSH, your free T4, your free T3, your TPO antibodies, your thyroglobulin antibodies, okay? Don't be afraid to test. And then the last thing I'm going to say is to nourish and love on your body. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is how to prepare your body for fertility. And then the second part, I'm going to talk about if there's some issues going on there. So one thing to understand is that for the longest time, the conversation was always about, well, if you can't get pregnant or you can't sustain a pregnancy, then it's all you. What we're knowing now through the research is that about 30% of difficulties getting pregnant has to do with men's health, okay? I mean, I came across a study which is crazy that affected sperm count and sperm motility if a male was drinking on average 1 drink a day. And sometimes, you could drink all of that in just one day. But affecting fertility, overweight, sugar affecting fertility. So a lot of times when we're trying to get pregnant, we think about what can I do? What can I do? But it's going to be you and your partner. It's going to be an effort together to nourish and to love on your body. Now, if you're preparing to get pregnant, what you want to understand is that for men, sperm health, the sperm that's going to be part of getting impregnated, starts the sperm that you're going to be using and the nutrients you're going to be using and the health of that sperm is going to happen 2 to 3 months before conception. So 2 to 3 months, you should be actively working on putting in the right nutrients, eliminating the things you want to eliminate. Okay. And so for women, that same 90-day period, you want to work on nourishing and putting the right supplements, putting the right foods in your body. Because what tends to happen is we get pregnant, and then what's the first thing we do? What's the first thing we're taught to do is go get a prenatal. But by the time you've found out that you're pregnant, the baby has already utilized nutrients that have been stored up from months before. So making sure that you have the right nutrients, making sure that you're nourishing the right way. Now, I'm going to start off with supplements. I think this is something that I've used. This is something that I've suggested to other women, and they've taken it and had really, really healthy, beautiful pregnancies. But these are the supplements I focus on. And then we're going to talk about the nutrition side of things, okay? So number one, I think we're getting some, I'll be honest with you guys. I know I'm getting comments, but I can't really see them right now. We'll see if I can see them here in a second. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, so I am going to go ahead and say this. Minerals over multivitamins. Minerals over multivitamins. You are more likely to get the vitamins that you need from the food that you're eating if you're eating a diverse palette of food than minerals. Because we're lacking minerals. When it comes to estrogen balance and estrogen health, when it comes to converting thyroid hormones, when it comes to helping testosterone levels and the health of the sperm, you go into the studies and the one thing that keeps popping up is different types of minerals, from selenium to boron to magnesium. So because we don't eat a lot of seafood, kind of really for the most part on a daily basis, and because our soil is lacking minerals, because the soil is lacking the nutrients that we used to be able to get from it, we're not getting minerals at the levels that we should, okay? So right off the bat, preparing for pregnancy, I'm going to be on a really, really good multi-mineral. Now, if you're listening to this, this is what I'm going to ask you to do. If you're like, hey, I want this, like I want to know exactly the supplements she's taking, I want to know how to take those supplements, make sure to go to our website, doctorswarren.com, and you'll see there you can sign up for our newsletter. You sign up for our newsletter, I'm going to send you this recap, I'm going to send you notes, I'm going to send you the supplements, and if you're tuning in tonight, I'm going to give you 10% off if you get the supplements from our shop. So go to doctorswarren.com. I forgot to add that there. Go to doctorswarren.com and sign up for the newsletter so you can get a recap of that this week. You'll get it this week. So number one, putting in the right nutrients, because the minerals are going to be involved with antioxidant production. The minerals are going to help with systems. The minerals are going to help with conversion. Minerals over multivitamins. And that's what you're going to see a lot in studies right now, is that the minerals are lacking in our diet. And so we're needing them for essential processes within our body. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'm going to be on is vitamin D. Now, I know there's a lot of discussion about vitamin D right now. A lot of discussion about, okay, should we be taking it? Should we not be taking it? Can we just go outside? Listen, you cannot say, I'm not going to supplement with vitamin D if you have not tested your vitamin D levels. And I can tell you this right now, vitamin D is a foundational need for fertility, for proper ovarian health, for good mitochondrial health, for good sperm health, for good testosterone levels, for good signaling, for good immune system. You need adequate vitamin D levels. And I can tell you this right now, I've been testing vitamin D levels for years. But within the last couple years, I would say the last 2 or 3 years, I have seen vitamin D levels at levels that I had never seen before. Now, just so you know, when you're testing vitamin D, medical limits are from 30 to 100, okay? Functional limits, okay, remember, 30 to 100 means, okay, what level do you have to be on so you don't have like a disease? But that's not what we're focused on. What we're focused on is what level of hormone D, because that's how it acts in the body, how much of hormone D do I need to be optimal? And that's closer to the 60, 70 range. What I can tell you this, a majority of the lab tests that I'm getting right now are people in the 20s. That is so dangerous. That is a struggle for you to be living day to day with vitamin D levels so low. So 20, that means you're outside of even medical limits. Right off the bat, I'm going to tell you guys, if you haven't had your vitamin D levels tested, and if it's not optimal, then supplementing with it. Now, there can be a few different reasons as to why our vitamin D levels are so low. It can be genetic SNPs. There is a genetic SNP that makes it very hard to keep vitamin D levels. And how do genetic SNPs happen? The environment, external environment. It's because our livers are overwhelmed with filtering the amount of toxins that it has to filter. Next, we're just not getting outside enough. But there's people that I've done labs on that work outside and they still don't have vitamin D levels. They're not synthesizing it efficiently. So right off the bat, if I'm going to be getting pregnant, if I'm working with someone that's getting pregnant, we're going to get on a multi-mineral. We're going to get on vitamin D. The next thing, now NAC and glutathione, but I work with NAC, which is a precursor to glutathione. There have been studies, there's one study that actually looked at it was a controlled clinical trial where they looked at women that were supplementing with folic acid, natural form of folic acid, the folate, with NAC and just the folate by itself. And what they found that by increasing NAC, by taking a certain amount of NAC, which is a precursor to glutathione, and what's glutathione? The most potent antioxidant that you can put in your body. They saw a decrease in cases of miscarriages. More women that are carrying their baby past 20 weeks. Why though? And I want you guys to understand, when I'm talking about supplements, and I'm starting off with supplements just because I know that's what people want to hear. And then I'm going to go through like the real stuff, like what it looks like to really nourish your body. But NAC, the reason why is because we have so much free radical and oxidative stress in our bodies. We have so much damage to our body at a cellular level that we have this oxidative stress that's making it hard for men and women to procreate. Okay. Now it's not that NAC is this amazing miracle supplement that's going to help you get pregnant. It's that NAC and glutathione we need more of it because of the damage to our cells that we have going on, because of the free radicals, because of the inflammation that exists. Now, for women, we have our eggs our whole entire life. All right, so our eggs are with us our whole entire life, and they're bombarded by a lot of stuff. So by giving it nourishing, nutrients, by giving it things that's going to increase our antioxidants in our body, is going to help those eggs be healthier as we use them. So NAC is definitely going to be one. That's one that if there is a history of miscarriage, I'm going to put them on, and I'm going to say, hey, we're going to stay on this as long as we need to help it go along. So high antioxidant support, NAC. Okay. The next supplement that I'm going to work on is a methylated-focused B multivitamin. Now, I use Moore's. I see amazing results on Moore's, both on Dutch tests and on lab work. Again, if you guys are interested in the supplements I'm talking about, because you're like, I want to get pregnant, I want to nourish myself, I want to be well, make sure to sign up for our newsletter on drswarren.com, and we'll send out an email recap of this. You'll get the discount for the supplement, and you'll know how to take it. So the reason why I think that a good B vitamin that focuses on methylation support is really important is because right now they said 50% now. The most recent study I saw is 60% of the population has this MTHFR gene mutation, okay? What that means is that we're not efficient at methylating or getting rid of toxins or getting rid of estrogen outside of our body. If you're not adequately getting rid of toxins, if you're not adequately getting rid of estrogen, you're going to have more difficulties getting pregnant. And you're going to have more difficulties in creating a healthy baby. Methylation is essential for good health, for our ability to remove toxins for ourselves, but it's essentials for brain, spinal cord, and nerves development in babies. In fact, right now, there's a lot of research looking into the connection between methylation and cleft palates and spina bifida. Because if you're taking a synthetic form of folic acid, your body cannot handle that, and it increases to toxic levels, causing issues. So I also test vitamin B levels, and that should be in the upper range, making sure that you have enough of those B vitamins for yourself and for baby. Okay? So I talked about minerals, I talked about NAC, vitamin D, okay? I talked about all of those. Now, the last thing I'm going to touch on is a good omega-3, omega-6, omega-9 supplement. Now, let me go ahead and let me say this about omegas. Omegas are going to focus on having an anti-inflammatory effect on your body. It's going to produce good prostaglandins. Now, you're probably wondering, like, what's prostaglandins? Listen, if you know, or if yourself, or you know someone that has had painful periods, cramping periods, pelvic pain, there's a prostaglandin issue going on. Now, let me kind of clarify the whole conversation with omega-3s, omega-6, and all of that, okay? Number one, what happened was we were getting a lot of omega-6. And that can contribute to a very inflammatory pathway that increases inflammatory prostaglandins, okay? Causing issues that can cause issues during your menstrual cycle, that can cause issues with fertility. So it was through a lot of the bad fats and the processed foods that we're eating. And so studies were finding out, like, hey, we're taking in too many omega-6s, so this means we need more omega-3. So now all these omega-3 supplements went on the market. Now, people are taking a bunch of omega-3s, but that's not how these essential fatty acids work in our body. There has to be a balance between omega-3, omega-6, omega-9. So even taking omega-6 still has great benefits, still produces healthy prostaglandins. The problem is we were creating this imbalance. So before, we're having too much omega-6, not enough omega-3. Then we started supplementing with all this omega-3, and then our omega-6s are too low. So you want to create a good balance. I'll tell you this right now, the best way to get, if you're going to supplement with it, the best way to get this omega balance is going to be from a plant-based source of omegas. So yes, you could do something like flaxseed oil, but one supplement I really, really love called Pureform Omega is going to be one of the best ways to increase that balance. So it's a balance. We're not just going in and putting a bunch of omega-3s. So those are my top supplements. Let's see if I can say it back to you guys, all right? Minerals, a multi-mineral, a methylated-focused multi-B, okay? Mineral, vitamin D, omegas, and then some NAC or some glutathione support to help with antioxidant. But let's go ahead and take a step back, because you're probably thinking, hey, can I get some of that from my food? And absolutely you can. And let's talk about eating to nourish our bodies and to support our bodies for fertility, okay? Let me go ahead and say this right off the bat. If you've been getting coached by me recently, you know I've talked about this a ton now. The foods that you eat are not meant to heal your body. Food is not medicine. The foods that you eat are not going to make you fertile, okay? That's not where it's going to be coming from. Where it comes from is from your body's own innate intelligence. Your body's created to heal. Your body wants to procreate. Your body wants to be well. So what you've got to understand when it comes to the foods that you're eating, and I think it's really important to understand this in regards to food, because then you can really kind of live in it and function in it once you get pregnant, is that number one, food is basic. Food is fuel for a car, okay? If you have a Ferrari, I came up with this example. I don't know if it's a great example because I don't know how cars work, okay? So if you have this fancy Ferrari, you're going to want to put good fuel in it so that the engine runs well. If I decide to put fuel that's not meant for a Ferrari and the Ferrari starts acting bad, and then I go, you know what, I'm going to go back to good fuel, and I put good fuel in there and the Ferrari starts acting good again, I'm not going to sit back and say, oh, the fuel fixed my Ferrari. No, the fuel did not. You just put in what's supposed to be there. So when you're preparing for pregnancy, when you're preparing to conceive, the last thing you want is stress. And honestly, I think we put too much pressure on ourselves when it comes to food. We see food as good or bad. We see food as it has to heal me, and if I don't eat that and I eat cookie, then I really screwed up, and look, I've messed up everything up. Listen, unless you have a diabetes issue, unless you do have something like gestational diabetes, for the most part, all you need to focus on is foods that are going to nourish your body. Okay? Listen, what you need for a healthy body in order to procreate and have a healthy pregnancy and healthy postpartum, what you need is clean food, clean air, clean water, and a healthy nervous system. That's it. So going back to the food, the problem that we have right now is that we're creatures of habit. So we buy the same foods, we like the same things, and especially if we're older, we're not trying new things. We're not diversifying our palate. We're not diversifying our plate. So we're eating the same things. And what we're missing out on are the same nutrients that are going to nourish and supply and help our ovaries, our uterus, our hormone, our HPA axis, okay? So what does it mean if you want to eat in a way that's going to promote fertility? What it means is that, come on guys, you know the Coca-Cola, it's never about what to eat. Because you know the Coca-Cola is going to be inflammatory. You know that sugar, the one thing that keeps showing up in studies is sugar and soda affecting sperm health in men and ovarian health in women, okay? We know that the donuts and the soda is not going to work. So what's the problem here? It's why we do it, right? Why do we choose to eat the foods that we eat? And it's usually because we have a disconnect about what our body needs. And it's also because of our emotional ties to the food that we're eating, okay? We find comfort and joy in food. If we're sad, we go to food. If we're stressed, we go to food, okay? And then the last thing is how we beat ourselves up if we mess up. When it comes down to it, when you're eating for nourishing foods, what we know is this. You need good, healthy fats. The omega-3, the omega-6, the omega-9s, the essential fatty acids are the building blocks to our hormones, are the building blocks to the babies that we want to create. Good, healthy fat. If you are not consuming a good amount of good, healthy fat, if you're not aware of you consuming good, healthy fat, then you're missing vital fatty acids. And when I say essential vital fatty acids, it means you cannot make it. You have to consume it. So if you're vegan, or if you're, eating more of a standardized diet, like more processed foods, and you're lacking in the fat department, you're lacking in the cholesterol that your baby needs for brain development, you're lacking in the cholesterol you need to sustain your hormones, to produce adequate amounts of hormones like estrogen and progesterone. So working on going into a very kind of more high fat. Now let me go ahead and tell you this, because people are like, oh, keto and all this. No. What I'm telling you is to consume more higher fat. So nuts and seeds, things like flax, ground up flax. You could do some chia seeds. What else do we have? Avocado, grapeseed oil. When you're changing up the fats in your diet, then you're making sure that you're getting this diverse plate of fat that's going to help with your hormones, that's going to help with baby development. So again, for women, you have to understand that estrogen, progesterone, cholesterol, DHEA, all of those hormones, all of the hormones that matter, comes from cholesterol. Cholesterol, a majority of it, is not made from the foods that you eat. Like, God forbid you eat an egg and now your cholesterol is going to go crazy. No. Cholesterol is produced by the liver. So when you need hormones to support, when you need hormones to support your fertility health, when you need hormones to support, growing a baby, you need fat. Without a doubt, that's exactly what you need, all right? The next thing you want to focus on is very antioxidant-rich foods, like resveratrol, okay? Antioxidant-rich foods, they're going to be those blue and purple foods like grape and blueberry and dark chocolate. Increasing your antioxidant-rich foods are going to help with the oxidative stress that makes your body go haywire, that makes your body feel overwhelmed, okay? So focusing, yes, the dark chocolate is stinking fantastic for you. Those grapes, those blueberries, maybe a glass of dry farm wine, okay? The one thing I will say is being aware of your caffeine intake when in regards to your nutrition, okay? We do see lots of studies that say drinking more than 1 cup as your body's trying to conceive can cause more miscarriages, all right? So keeping it down to 1 cup, and either way, work on switching out. So if you're drinking a lot of coffee right now, and this is the thing, it's not just the coffee, because if you're drinking the coffee and then you're drinking the tea and then you're drinking all this other stuff, or like matcha, like if you're adding in all this extra caffeine, you don't realize how much of caffeine you're getting throughout the day, okay? So you want to be aware of that. You want to be aware of the caffeine situation, right? Now, when we're looking at, okay, so how about fasting? How does fasting work? I think fasting is a fantastic way to prepare your body as well for conception. Now, if you're going to be conceiving this month, don't do any fasting, all right? But utilizing intermittent fasting, pushing for that 16-hour mark, because the one thing you have to understand about intermittent fasting is that you're not eating less calories, okay? I'm going to put a disclaimer here. You're not eating less calories. You're just closing down your eating window. But I have had this issue with women when I've looked at their food diary. A majority of the time, the coaching clients versus men and women that I have to get onto about eating enough calories is women, okay? Because what we know is that they talked about forever, like how we're eating too much calories, right? We're eating too much calories, things, like processed foods and all this stuff. But what I'm finding is that a lot of women that are having this hormone resistance, this hormone issue, not able to lose the weight, not able to get pregnant, anything like that, they're not eating enough calories. They're not consuming enough fuel. And this is how we find out. Most women don't realize it. Most women don't know it until we do a stinking food diary, until I have them look at their calories. Because in the past, what we've done with macros, if we've used it for restriction. Oh, I got to cut back on my calories. Oh, you feel guilty because you eat all this stuff. What you should be using a food diary for and macro counting is to show yourself all the ways that you can consume the foods you love, that you can consume the foods that nourish your body by looking at how much you're eating. And again, 9 times out of 10, when I am working with a woman, because if there's any kind of hormone imbalance, if you're a little resistant, or you're just stressed out, you have other kids you're running around, what I find is that you're not eating enough. You're not eating enough calories, so your body's retaining onto fat cells, and it's functioning from a very dysfunctional state, okay? So if you are not consuming enough calories to nourish your body enough to push it forward, I will take women off of intermittent fasting. I've had women that I've had to take away from intermittent fasting because they're not consuming enough to nourish their bodies. If you do not consume enough, then you're not actively fasting in a healthy way. What you're doing now is starving. If you're starving, you're not going to see the amazing results when it comes to fasting. Okay? So be aware that if you're going to utilize intermittent fasting, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're consuming enough calories in your 8-hour eating window. And how do you do that? You consume more fat. And a lot of times I have a lot of women that are just like, oh my gosh, like I don't know how to get more fat in. You use it in your condiments. You use it by doing bulletproof coffee, blending up that grass-fed butter, blending in the coconut oil, the MCT oil. You get your fat in through the broth that you're consuming. Fat bombs are a great way. Eggs, use it in the condiments, like mayo is a good way. Homemade mayo is a very easy thing to make with eggs. You can increase your fat content to it. And I'm always doing fat nourishing smoothies. So what does that mean? Coconut milk from a can, macadamia nut milk from a carton. And I'm putting in half an avocado in. I'm putting a little bit of essential oil. I'll do some ancient nutrition collagen protein. Did I say olive oil? A little bit of salt. Like, use the things that you're drinking to be able to consume more fat. So what I find is that a lot of times we will consume empty calories in the things that we're drinking because we're drinking our calories and our sugar from the juices and from the sweeteners and stuff. But now you can switch that around and use a hot tea. You can do a bulletproof hot tea. What does a bulletproof hot tea mean? It means you're taking your tea like a green tea and you blend it up really, really well with grass-fed butter, and it's kind of like a creamer for you, okay? You want to increase your fat. You want to increase your antioxidant-rich foods, and you want to eat intuitively. You eat when you're hungry. You don't eat when you're not. You have to work on removing that emotional tie. And the reason why is this, because during pregnancy, it's not a coincidence that we're drawn to these things that what do you call it? Like you have cravings, right? Yes, sometimes those cravings can be a food that's not very healthy, but if we take that are not very nourishing, not necessarily very healthy, like they're just not nourishing food choices. But if we took a step back and we said, okay, you're having, this, you have this craving for chips. What are the chips giving you? A saltiness, a crunchiness? What is that saying? Maybe you need some more sodium. When we can take a step back and eat more intuitively, like, okay, listen, I'm going to eat food. I'm not going to put all these restrictions on myself. I'm going to eat food from animals that are outside in the grass, from animals that are outside in the sun. I'm going to drink clean water. I'm going to focus on, this is a thing I wanted to mention. You want to make sure that if you're drinking coffee, that you're going every 4 to 5 weeks and doing a week of decaf. If you're doing decaf coffee, you want it to make sure that it's a water processed, not chemically processed decaf. You don't want to, increase this burden of toxins as you're trying to support your body in a nourishing way. Okay? So those are some of the things that you can start doing right now. Those are some of the ways that you can start eating. Those are the supplements that you can start doing. And again, you do not wait until you have conceived to start taking a prenatal. I think that's just the bare minimum. That's the minimum. If you want a healthy pregnancy, not just a healthy pregnancy, but a child that's getting all the nutrients and that you are well postpartum, because this is the biggest thing I find. The biggest thing I find is that you are not giving your body the nutrients it needs to support you and a baby. So if you do get pregnant, what ends up happening is that the baby's going to suck all of the nutrients from you. Top priority will be growing the baby, okay? Second priority will be you. So why is it that a majority of the women, when I sit down with them and I talk about when their hormones kind of got wonky, when they started feeling differently, it was after they had a baby? It's because a lot of the nutrients have been lost. A lot of toxins are dumped out. when your bones being, moved around. So it's really important to understand that you have to nourish yourself, support yourself, so that the baby's supported as well. Now, let's talk about why it could be difficult to get pregnant, why there could be some miscarriages. What it comes down to, there's a lot of different things. It can be stress, adrenal, cortisol. It can be low progesterone, which is the most common thing that I see is going to be low progesterone, okay? I see that a lot. Now, it can be adrenals, it can be low progesterone, it can be too much estrogen. But one really common thing that I think it's really important to understand is DNA damage. It's DNA that's not optimal. It's epigenetics that have affected DNA transcription. Because a really important thing to understand is that you can have difficulties becoming pregnant, and there can be miscarriage issues because there's DNA damage in sperm, there's DNA damage in our eggs. But even if you get pregnant, there can still be DNA changes that will affect the health of the child for the rest of their lives. And that's really important to understand. And that's why I think the bare minimum is just working on fertility and working on getting pregnant. The optimal is how well can you be so that you're raising a healthy baby. Because the studies are showing right now that the same toxins that you have, you pass on to baby. The same bacteria you have, you pass on to baby. The same genetic changes your husband has, you pass on to baby. Okay? So it's not just about getting pregnant. It's about how do you support your body the best way so that you're well enough to recover postpartum with your hormones intact, and how can you raise a healthy baby. Now, I will say one of the most recent things that I've been working on a lot with people is progesterone production. Now, how does progesterone production show up when you have your period, and how can it affect your ability to become fertile? So I just posted on our Doctors Warren page an OBGYN that says hormone imbalances aren't real, okay? And I thought doctors thought like this, but I can't believe they do. And it would make sense why there's so many women with the hormone issues that they have, okay? So let me go ahead and explain this and how this is going to affect your ability to get pregnant. And then I'm going to talk about adrenal health, okay? The first part, your follicular phase of your menstrual cycle. And so your menstrual cycle isn't just when you bleed. Your menstrual cycle is from day one of your bleed to the next day one of your bleed, okay? So from the day one of your bleed, your progesterone and estrogen had gone down, okay? You start stimulating from your pituitary, you get FSH, follicular stimulating hormone. And it's meant to stimulate the follicles, and it starts producing estrogen, okay? So the first, it's usually day 1 through day 14. It can be day 15, day 16 for you. It's going to be more of an estrogen kind of focused phase. So FSH is secreted. Estrogen continues to be secreted until it spikes, and it elicits luteinizing hormone to be released from the pituitary, okay? Luteinizing hormone is where that follicle creates a corpus luteum, which produces your progesterone. And then your progesterone is the star of the show during your luteal phase, okay? So day 14 or 15 until you bleed again. But what we're finding, whether it's because we're exposed to a lot more endocrine disruptors that act like estrogen, or it's because our liver is overwhelmed and cannot methylate or break down estrogen in phase 1 or phase 2 detox, or because our gut is not efficient because we're not going multiple times a day, because we're not producing enough bile, and we're not getting rid of estrogen. So it can be estrogen from our environment, it can be estrogen that we're reabsorbing, that now we're creating an imbalance between estrogen and progesterone. Now you have an imbalance where you have estrogen dominance, or you're not producing enough progesterone from your corpus luteum, which means your luteal phase is shorter than it should be. Okay, so I would say, you want it to at least be between, about I'd say 10 to 15 days, right? Some of you guys, some women I'm seeing are having it 9 days, 8 days. How do you know you might have a progesterone issue? If you're feeling emotional before your period, if you see spotting before your period, and not just emotional. Let me go ahead and say this because they make a lot of jokes about PMS. PMS is not funny. especially the type of PMS that I hear that women have. Like, no, it's not normal to feel so enraged. No, it's not normal to feel depressed or anxious or overwhelmed, like you feel like you can't take on the day. We write it off as PMS is because we have OBGYNs that don't know how to do their freaking job, and they're making women believe that how they feel is freaking normal when it's not. Okay, it's just not. So what we're finding is that when you don't have enough progesterone, so this is a good way to know as well, okay? When your luteinizing hormone spikes, your temperature rises. And doing, the fertility awareness method, taking your basal body temperature, which means taking your temperature before you get out of bed, tracking it. And there's two things that your basal body temperature will tell you. Number one, it'll tell you if your thyroid, if you're probably in a hypo state of thyroidism. And then it'll tell you when you're out of your luteal phase or when you're still in it. Okay? So I'll tell you how it connects with your thyroid here in a second. But by taking your temperature every day, what you can notice is, number one, you will know you're pregnant before you get a positive pregnancy test. Because that increase of temperature is meant to keep your internal body warmer, kind of like an incubation, like a little incubator, okay, to grow a baby. If those temperatures do not remain high, then that means your progesterone's done, the luteal phase is done, you're going into your follicular phase, okay? So what happens if you're doing your temperature and you notice it's only 8 days, it's only 7 days, then you're not having enough progesterone. And why is this important? Because if miscarriages are happening before the 9 to 10 week mark, the primary source for where your baby's getting its progesterone is the corpus luteum. Past the 10-week mark, it's getting it from the placenta. So when there is a disconnect, whether the LH, you're not signaling it enough, whether you have too much estrogen, whether you're not producing enough progesterone, what's going to happen is your body's not going to be able to sustain the baby with enough progesterone until the placenta kicks in. Why does this matter? Because I can literally, on my computer, pull up all the women that I have coached just recently that have experienced miscarriages, because they did not have enough progesterone. There's a study that I pulled up just recently working with someone that showed that the ranges for progesterone in regards to blood work can be like 14 to 45, something like this. And that if someone has had a miscarriage, that you now need to be eyeing that the bottom range to go higher, to go above 20 or 25 or 30, okay? And so why does this matter? It's because women are being told, and it's hard and it's difficult, but we're being told that if a miscarriage happens, it's just cause. When we have hormone issues, when there are hormone issues present, when we can see on labs that, things aren't optimal, when we see our vitamin D level is suboptimal, it's in the 30s, when we see that our progesterone is on the low end of the range, when we have estrogen dominant symptoms, when our TSH for thyroid is creeping up above a 3, and studies say that for fertility, for good healthy fertility, your TSH should be below a 2.5, okay? You need those hormones to be at the right levels. And so what's happening is, what I am finding is because there's no direction for women to help their bodies, to understand their bodies better, I'm seeing more women in my office having multiple miscarriages before they see me than ever before. Because they're being told that, it just happened, okay, try again. Or, okay, well, when you try again, just make sure you come see me at the beginning. And now what that's doing is, instead of identifying possible causes that are creating these hormone imbalances, we're pushing women out to just hope for the best. Or what they're doing is, okay, well, we did the blood work, I'll see you in a month. When we know the progesterone isn't optimal, and then in a month later, women are having to discover that something happened on ultrasound. When if the doctor had addressed the suboptimal ranges, they didn't have to be there. There's certain things that can happen. There's certain things that can change. And that's why you have to understand what those labs are. That's why you have to understand what those hormones are. You have to understand what your thyroid is saying. Now, yes, every woman should retaking charge of your fertility? Absolutely. All right. And fave supplement companies for a good prenatal. So right now, my favorite one is Baby and Me 2, because they have methylated-focused vitamins in it. It's just kind of like a whole plant, not whole plant-based, like a whole food-based supplement. I really like Baby and Me 2. Again, guys, if you're listening to this and you're like, I want to get some supplements, I'd love a discount, I want to get notes to this, make sure to go to drswarren.com, DRSWARREN.com, and sign up for a newsletter. And everyone that signs up today will get an email of what I talked about today. Now, the other thing I want to talk about too, another thing that's going to be really important is our adrenal health. So what I'm finding is that women are tired. Like, we're tired, okay? Whether you have kids or not, what I'm finding is that we tend to push through. We tend to go do what we have to do. We tend to, if we have kids, get the kids ready, go to work, help, the partner, like, do all this stuff. If, we're single or in school, like, we push ourselves. But the problem that is being ignored is that when it comes to women's hormones, our hormones are very sensitive to each other. It communicates in whispers, all right? It communicates in whispers. So what that means is that when your cortisol, so this is the amazing thing about how God created us, okay? Our bodies can react to real or perceived situations. That's amazing, because you can think yourself well. You can use actual affirmations if there's emotions behind it. But what that also means is that stress is stress is stress. It means that your adrenals are going to react to a tiger chasing you, but your adrenals are also going to react to a fight that you had with your partner, or, like with your spouse, or you're going off of lack of sleep, or you're functioning off of caffeine, or you're rushing woman syndrome. That's a book, okay? Like a rushing woman syndrome. They made a book because we do it, because we rush and rush and rush. But now the problem is that our adrenals are now adapted to be in a very sympathetic state. So what does that mean? High cortisol or cortisol insufficiency, just not producing enough cortisol for when you need it and how you need it. When you have that, now your body is in a state of survival. And I want you to understand something. If there's an animal, if there's a giraffe that's out in the wild, and it's about to give birth, and it senses there's a predator, what's going to naturally happen? What's going to be its sympathetic response? The birthing process will stop. The same exact type of cascade of events happens in a woman's body. When your adrenals are overwhelmed, your body will not, out of a protective mechanism, and that's the one thing we have to remember, is that our bodies are doing the right thing at the right time, even if we don't understand it, even if it's not doing it the way we want it to do it. But the adrenals having high cortisol or insufficiency of cortisol is going to prevent conception to happen, or even the birth to happen. Why? Because it's not safe. Because your body is not safe. Because your body feels it's a threat. And that can happen with when you're restricting your calories too much. I mentioned that already, not consuming enough to nourish your body. When you're over exercising, okay? When you're being bombarded by chemicals, when you're being bombarded by EMF radiation, like from our technology and our blue light. Guys, they have studies right now, and I had it pulled up here. They have studies where they show the EMF radiation from putting a laptop on a man's lap or putting a cell phone in his pockets decrease sperm motility, which, just so you know, sperm motility is a sign of testicular health, of sperm health, okay? So that decrease in sperm numbers and sperm motility. Same thing, same effect for your ovaries. So what we're finding is that we're more stressed out, we're more overwhelmed. And let me go and tell you, like, I know that it feels like self-care is like taking a shower by yourself or like sitting in the bathroom by yourself. No. Self-care has to be an active practice that you do every day. Whether it's yoga, prayer, meditation, going out, barefoot, grounding. You have to signal to your body that it is safe, that you are calm, that it can heal, that it can balance. And the number one best way to fix your adrenals is 100% your lifestyle choices. It's how you wake up in the morning. And then secondaries are adaptogen, like rhodiola, cordyceps. I love holy basil, ginseng. Those supplements help your body adapt. High dose vitamin C, like I love the BioFizz BioC. It helps restore cortisol balance, okay? But talking about those lifestyle related changes, it's waking up and immediately going outside to the sun. Letting the body register natural sunlight. It creates a cascade of events within your body affecting all of your hormones, just having sunlight, touching your skin receptors, touching your eyes, okay? What it's going to do is going to allow your cortisol to be at good balance and your melatonin to come down, okay? Allowing yourself to do box breathing, deep breathing, looking up like Wim Hof, like the breathing method, box breathing, because what you don't understand is because we're so stressed out, because we hold all of our stress in our body, we have very constricted breathing. Increasing breathing and slowing down breathing, doing big breaths, have been shown to create like a switch for the autonomic nervous system. Your cortisol affects the HPA axis, hypothalamus pituitary, which affects the HPO axis, hypothalamus pituitary ovarian axis, which affects your HPT, hypothalamus pituitary thyroid axis, okay? So working on bringing that down. Now, I have some teachers that I've coached during the craziness of all of this in the pandemic, and I had to make sure in order to support the hormones, and this particular person I was working with had a hysterectomy and all her hormones were out of whack even after the hysterectomy. But we had to create a distinction in her day between when she was done with school, when things were stressful, and when it was time to go home and rest. So before, like when she was done running around doing all the school stuff, she had to go outside and spend time outside before she was allowed to go inside. Because we have to signal to our body. We have to allow our bodies to know that it is safe, that we are not in danger, that it's time to heal and to, balance, right? Allow the autonomic nervous system to go into play. Now, how about the thyroid? The thyroid can be a big one, because what we know is that most doctors, endocrinologists, are not looking at active thyroid hormones in those optimal levels. So studies are now showing that thyroid stimulating hormone, which we know your TSH can look normal and your active hormone you not have enough of it. So just so that you know, the active hormone T3 connects with every cell in your body to create ATP, which is energy. So that means energy for your cell to function, all of your cells, which means that if you don't have energy for all of your cells to function, then you're not allowing your body to function optimally. So when you don't have adequate activated T3, you're not going to be able to keep up with the systems that your body's doing. That's when you're going to feel fatigued. That's when you're going to feel tired. That's where you're going to see weight loss resistance. That's where you're going to feel like you're struggling more with depression. That's when you're going to feel like you're struggling more with anxiety. Studies have shown that your TSH for fertility health should be under a 2.5. And that's crazy, because right now, all doctors are telling women is that the TSH should be, they go by the range on paper, and that range can go as high as 4.5. So there could be issues with your fertility health because your thyroid, it's not that it's off the medical range, it's just not optimal. Because you don't have enough hormone, this T3, to allow ATP production, to allow energy production. So getting adequate testing is important. So TSH, getting that tested, free T4, free T3, that free T3 is going to be really important. Another thing that's going to be important to know and to understand is thyroid antibodies. Thyroid antibodies are markers of an autoimmune issue against your thyroid. But when you have one autoimmune issue, you can have you're 3 times as likely to have another. So when the body is under this kind of autoimmune storm, it's going to be harder for you to get pregnant. It's going to be harder for you to be healthy and fertile. So making sure that those levels are right. And listen, I know that what's going to happen is this. They're going to, the doctor's going to put you on the thyroid hormones and then just say, let's move on. Again, I want to remind you guys, fertility health isn't just about getting pregnant. Fertility health is about what makes you a woman. It's what makes you feel good. It's what makes you feel well. Progesterone works on GABA receptors, your ability to rest at night, your ability to feel happiness in your life, your ability to feel stable in your life. Estrogen is at its core how you as a woman are able to fight against things like cancer and heart disease and brain disorders. So our sex hormones are not things to be disregarded. There's this new movement by these OBGYNs saying it doesn't matter if you have a period. If it didn't matter, you wouldn't freaking have one. All right? Like, we have those hormones. You can only get progesterone through ovulation. You can only get those great feelings of balance, balancing out and keeping your estrogen in check through ovulation. Those hormones are not just about making babies. Those hormones are about how healthy your thyroid is, how healthy your breast, ovarian, uterine health is, how healthy, your digestive system is. There's a, what do they call it? Estrobiome, something like that, okay? Where we have this deep connection from our gut microbiome and our estrogen and our hormones levels, okay? Because of our gut health. So when it comes to your hormones, paying attention to how you feel throughout your menstrual cycle will give you those red flags about what's going on with those hormone levels. Now, just to kind of wrap up, I'm just going to let you guys know, and I know, Melissa, you asked if we're already on the newsletter. We got you. We'll make sure you get the email. So what she's asking about is that if you're tuning in just now, or if you're listening and you're like, I would like a recap of this, I would like the notes of this, we will email it out this week. If you go to doctorswarren.com, DRSWARREN.com, sign up for the newsletter, we'll send it to you, and a 10% off for the supplements that I'm talking about that I'll send to you. Well, let me go ahead and answer this question, Kelly. My bad. I did not see this. So how about gestational diabetes? Guys, okay, if I go back to what I said about pregnancy is kind of the baby's kind of pulling out nutrients. It's pulling out things that it needs, whether you have enough of it or not. What that also means is it allows for opportunities for underlying things to come to the surface. Heavy metal toxicity, thyroid issues, estrogen hormone issues. For some people, it helps their hormone issues get better, but it has to do with that relationship between you and baby in utero, okay? But what that means is that if there is gestational diabetes, the problem was there before. Your ability to properly handle, process, and burn carbs. The problem was there before. And this is why. Right now, the blood sugar issue, anyone can have it. It's no longer about just weight gain. You can be skinny, you can get type 1.5 diabetes, which is an autoimmune and also type 2 insulin resistant type of diabetes. Type 3 diabetes is Alzheimer's and dementia. The problem is that we're not looking at doctors aren't looking at the right lab work. So we're looking at glucose, or if they're looking at A1C and they're like, okay, everything looks fine, but not looking at fasting insulin. And your fasting insulin is high, which means you're recruiting a lot of insulin, requiring the pancreas to create all this insulin to deal with the carb load that you're consuming. And what it's doing is you go into this vicious cycle of carbs going in the body, your body's carb toxic, it's not able to burn, utilize through those carbs, and you have all this insulin recruitment, all this insulin recruitment. You know how you know if you have an issue with that? If you feel hangry, if you can't skip breakfast, if you feel dizzy, if you feel any sort of way after eating a meal, like let's say you eat a meal and all of a sudden you're feeling energized, or you're eating a meal and you feel tired, that's all red flags of a blood sugar issue. PCOS is a red flag of a blood sugar issue. It's a metabolic disorder, right? So what's happening is that a lot of times we're having this insulin issue and we don't have doctors that are looking at insulin. And just so you know, this insulin blood sugar issue affects almost like every single process for estrogen, progesterone, testosterone production for women. It affects thyroid hormone production. And so what ends up happening is you have these underlying issues, and now you have all this added stress and all these hormones that are changing, and it comes to the surface. I've been able to help women successfully see those glucose levels balance out by changing their nutrition. And I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning of this Facebook Live. It's not about restriction. It's not about punishing yourself. It's not about getting rid of everything. It's about making the choices that are going to allow you to be full, that is giving you the nutrients that you need to grow you and baby without having severe restrictions. So it's possible to do that. But that gestational diabetes is just telling you that what you're consuming right now, your body is not able to burn off or utilize, which means you have to back off from that. So that's what that gestational diabetes is talking about there. So I think the question was, you had gestational diabetes during your, gestational diabetes, my next child at a future preeclampsia. Okay, and that's what I'm saying. Right now, if that's something that you're concerned about, get yourself fasting insulin, fasting glucose, A1C. Get those labs done along with CBC, CMP. See what those numbers are. As a fasting insulin should be down below a 9, okay? Now, let me go ahead and tell you this. If you're going to your OBGYN and they're not ordering the labs that you want, fire your OBGYN. If they're saying, fine, I will order the labs you want, but there's no use in them, fire that OBGYN. Because even if they're going to order the labs you want, they've already decided that what you're thinking is wrong and it's all in your head. And you're probably thinking, Dr. Becca, you're being a little critical. Go ahead and read the most recent post that I posted about an OBGYN who said to all the women in the social media world that hormone imbalances aren't real, and that what you're thinking is not real, and that even if I do your labs, you're not going to find anything. If you're not having someone who's recognizing that there's a problem, looking at the labs the right way, and giving you lifestyle recommendations where you can see changes in your cycle, then you need to fire your practitioner, okay? That's the big thing, okay? Because you have to be able to have someone on your side. I have, again, women that are going to doctors that are not treating them differently after they've had miscarriages. They're not giving them the information they need to support and to help their body bounce back. So that's why I'm seeing more women, virtually and in my office that are coming to see me after 2 miscarriages or after 3 miscarriages. Because what are you told? It happened, sorry, and if you get pregnant again, make sure to make an appointment, okay? Let's talk about some lab testing. Here we go. Again, if you want this information, go to doctorswarren.com. Just sign up for our newsletter. I'll send it to you. Labs. Let's talk about labs. The reason why it drives me crazy when women will bring in hormone labs from their OBGYN is because it's very important to do labs at the right time in your cycle. Going in and just getting sex hormones whenever is not going to be helpful to you, okay? So you want to test your progesterone day 19 to 21 of your cycle. You can also check your estradiol on day 19 to 21, but that's going to be the best time to test it. Luteinizing hormone, follicular stimulating hormone, FSH and estradiol, you can do day 3 of your cycle, okay? You can do luteinizing hormone as well there. But you want to make sure that you're doing the testing at the right time. And that's probably why the OBGYN I posted is your labs don't tell anything. Well, yeah, lady, because you're not, checking it at the right time. You want to check your TSH, free T4, free T3, TPO antibodies, thyroid globulin antibodies, and your reverse T3. That is kind of like a stress marker. It's going to let you know if your body's under stress. Complete a blood count, complete metabolic profile. Look at your iron levels with ferritin. Look at your vitamin B12, your folates, and your vitamin D. Okay? Those are all the ones that you want to get checked. And you want them to not just be within range. You want them to be optimal. Okay? So, again, just a few more things as I wrap up here. If you guys have any last questions here, make sure to, do you recommend raw milk during and before pregnancy? Curious on your opinion on Weston A. Price. sacred foods they recommend for trying to conceive in pregnancy. Okay, we are huge Weston A. Price. Like, we're big Weston A. Price. And it's very nourishing. It's very healing. Is it Thomas Siegfried is amazing. Sally Fallon is amazing. Now, the only thing I have with the raw milk situation is that the microbiome. If your microbiome is well enough to handle raw milk, then yes. But if your microbiome is not well enough to handle raw milk, then no. And if you're not sure, then using raw goat milk can give you those same benefits, but more of it using an A2 casein type milk. I actually really love Nourishing Traditions. That's a great book to look at how to nourish your bodies with more fat and more like gut healing things. So if you can handle it, if you're pretty sure you're going to the bathroom, you're having good normal bowel movements after you eat your meals, not like immediately after, if they're good form, if you're not feeling bloated, if you're not having skin rashes, if you don't get headaches after it, then yeah, that I wouldn't see an issue with raw milk, especially since it's going to be full of more nutrients for you. You're going to actually get the right nutrients for it. If you're not too sure, then and you want to do a raw milk, then do raw goat's milk. But that was a really good question. So the biggest thing is understanding that we have a system right now that's failing women. It's failing women's hormone health. It's failing women's fertility health. Okay? And to trust what you know in your gut when something is wrong. Do not feel like you have to stay with a practitioner that's not going to help you. And that the best way to layer for your hormone health, the best way to layer for your fertility health is going to be number one, the basics. Clean food, clean water, clean air, proper functioning nervous system. And then from there, add the supplements. And then from there, you can do some further stuff, especially if you've been diagnosed with PCOS, if you've been diagnosed with endometriosis, if you've been diagnosed with all this stuff. And let me go ahead and touch on this, just so you guys know. PCOS is not a sex hormone issue. It's not a menstrual issue, even though it causes symptoms there. It is a metabolic issue. It is a metabolic issue or adrenal issue. Endometriosis is not a sex hormone issue. It's an inflammatory autoimmune issue. Okay? Fibroids are not just a sex hormone issue. It's inability to properly eliminate sex hormones to balance out estrogen. Okay? So I think those are the top 3 things that we can find that women have issues with. Cramping, heavy bleeding during your menstrual cycle can be high estrogen dominance, or it can be a histamine issue. Have you ever drank alcohol and your nose got stuffy or you got flushed? That's going to be a histamine reaction, which means you're going to have that histamine reaction to other fermented things, like the good fermented stuff like kimchi and kombucha, okay? You can have a histamine issue. You can have a prostaglandin issue. If you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling depressed, if you're spotting, if you're getting headaches before your period, then we're looking at progesterone issues. Now, are the supplements and vitamins you've been mentioning safe while pregnant and breastfeeding? Yes, all of them are. And I want to mention that too. Thank you for asking that, Nicole. One thing I did not mention in regards to supplements that I would take, I would absolutely take a good spore-forming probiotic. I'm going to say this too, because spore-forming probiotics they're bacillus strands, so they're kind of encapsulated. They're encapsulated as they go down your digestive system, so they actually survive your digestive tract, whereas other ones can get lost along the way. And once they get there, they open and they proliferate according to the environment. Why is that important? And then, of course, you can do good fermented foods like kimchi and sauerkraut, a little bit of kombucha, but I would have you focus more like the raw goat yogurt and stuff like kefir, because your gut microbiome is going to determine your vaginal microbiome health, okay? So what's going on around like your vaginal canal, okay? It all comes from stool from your stomach. So what that means is it also protects baby from group B strep, which is something that gets tested for later on in pregnancy. But the one thing also to understand is that not only is having good bacteria in your gut without having that good bacteria in your gut, you're going to give your baby their microbiome in utero while they're swimming in your belly when you give birth to them vaginally. And if you do have a C-section, it's even more important to make sure you're supporting baby with their own bacteria, because they can pick up bacteria in the emergency room, but also while breastfeeding. So while you're breastfeeding, you're still seeding their microbiome, which is why it's really important to have that under control. Okay, what to do about a histamine issue? Kombucha and alcohol. I have reactions, but only sometimes. Okay, this is a really good question. So you, Melissa, you had the same question too. I don't know if it's usually with just alcohol. Like, do you guys ever feel it with like fermented foods? Like if you do kombucha or if you do like some other stuff. So here's a few things about the histamine thing. So there's 3 different ways that you can kind of view the histamine thing. Number 1, there can be a genetic SNP, DOA SNP. Okay, we'll just get that right out of the way. If you guys look up Dr. Ben Lynch, BenLynch, you can read a little bit more about what that genetic SNP means. It's just, it makes it harder for you to process those types of things and creates that histamine reaction. The next thing is bacterial overgrowth. Certain bacteria are going to contribute to histamine, systemic histamine reactions. So creating a healthier environment within your gut is going to help support how your body's processing that this histamine producing foods. So creating a better environment within your gut, so switching up the bacteria that you're using so that you're replenishing with good diversity. And I do love, you know what I do love doing when it comes to like probiotics and stuff like that? I like switching up my probiotics. So like if I do probiotics one month, then in the next month I'm going to commit to increasing to at least 3 servings a day of like food that has good, probiotics in it, right? But if you have some of those foods and you still feel like you're having that histamine reaction, then stick to the capsules. Okay, that's something to pay attention to. The next thing is paying attention to the type of alcohol as well, because there's other chemicals within them like sulfites that are going to cause that reaction to occur, where it's going to kind of recruit like kind of like a toxin, like it's going to be like a toxin inside your body. So between the sugar that they add back into wines, and a lot of the artificial ingredients, even in wine, but even in mixed drinks, they're going to have that in there. But I would say if it is a real histamine reaction, then looking at the gut microbiome and creating a better environment so that you can balance out the bacteria that cause a histamine reaction to happen. But if you guys, I will also send you guys kombucha and alcohol reactions too, but only sometimes. Perfect. So in the newsletter, if you guys make sure, I know Melissa, you want that, just make sure you guys are on there. I'll give some extra pointers on how to kind of understand histamine for you to make sure it's not actually the ingredients in it, but it is the actual histamine problem. But yes, it's that sensitivity to it, and you can cause that change through the gut microbiome, creating a better environment there. That was a really, really great question. All right, so any of this, thank you, Amanda. Love this. Lots of great information. I'm glad I could do this. Honestly, guys, I could talk all night about this type of thing. I love this stuff. If you guys have any questions, here's a few things you can do. If you listen to this and you have questions, do you also recommend Baby and Me prenatal on top of those? I don't. I know it's kind of scary. Of course, talk with your practitioner, your doctor, before you make any big health changes. But I think a prenatal is just the bare, it's basic. It's just like the bare minimum of what you're doing. Is just you're kind of like covering your corners. But for the most part, so my vitamin D that I recommend has A, E, and K in it. So you already have those fat soluble vitamins. You have all the minerals. You're getting all the B vitamins. You're getting all. So no, you wouldn't need to do that. If you wanted to do like maybe just the minerals and the Baby and Me prenatal, then yeah. Or if you just wanted, because the Baby and Me prenatal has the methylated B12 and I think methylated folate as well. So you can kind of play around with those, but I would not do Baby and Me prenatal in all of those. If you're going to do all of those other ones, just do it. If you're going to do Baby and Me, then you can do like a probiotic and minerals. And if you want to do something like for antioxidant health. Now, all of those things are going to help through the first trimester. Yeah, the Moors is great. I'll tell you what, I see great results on both Dutch tests and on blood work with Moors. So Moors has B vitamins in it, but it has like ton of different herbs and supplements that are shown to help with 21 steps in the methylation process. And it's by systemic formulas. So yeah. But I want, oh, and then let me just, what I want you guys to know though, like, in the end, if you're diversifying your plate, if you're increasing your good quality fat, if you're eating antioxidants rich foods with, you know, high amounts of endo-3 carbinol or resveratrol, like, you guys are doing so much already. Just doing so much by changing the way that you view and how you eat food, and then adding these nutrients on top are just you know, like the icing on top. It's just making sure that you have everything that you need to continue with your goals in regards to fertility and all of that. All right. So thank you guys for tuning in. Of course, if you have any questions, you can comment here or send us a message on our Facebook page. And if your question is there, we'll add it to the email we send out. So if anything pops up and you're like, I would like to ask a question, you know, send me a message on Facebook. We'll include it in the email when we set it out. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.